All right, so as many of you all now know, Trump has really gotten under the skin of many Christians, a lot of folks that were his supporters, are now really becoming quite annoyed with Donald Trump. And it's because of his most recent post, or I guess his repost of an image of him depicted as the Messiah, Jesus, healing someone in a sick bed while some angels or whatever's around him and people around him looking at him in awe and his glory as he heals and lays hands on the sick. Now, let me tell you again, many people are missing like the forest from the trees, so to speak. Many people are missing the point here. Like, many people think that Trump is in his room, in his bed, laying back, scrolling on Twitter and retweeting things. Like, many people are naive to believe that the president of these United States, arguably the most sophisticated government entity ever, would allow a sitting U.S. president to freely tweet and retweet whatever he wants, knowing that this individual is an individual. He can move autonomously. He can be manipulated. He can be taken over, whatever. Come on. So what you should take away from this goes back to what I've said in my earlier videos about, again, Trump really playing his part as the agent of chaos, which is really a component or part of a greater overarching strategy that the U.S. government, this entity, has in place. And they've been working this strategy for some time now. Trump is just sort of the more recent component of that strategy. Many people are missing the point from that. Like, Trump doing this, let me kind of illustrate why Trump, or let me not say the Trump. Let me speak very plainly here. Let me help you all kind of understand a little bit as to why the U.S. government would put out a tweet like this, where the president of the United States and Donald Trump is depicted as Jesus Christ, laying hands on the sick, yada, yada, yada. Okay. And my wife and I were talking about this the other day, and I really went on a spiel about this, but let me kind of give here's what's probably happening. The U.S. government knows that, many, conservatives, Christians, you name it, basically Christians, for the most part, many of them support Trump. Now, and you have a lot of like vocal leadership within the Christian right that support Trump. They're advocates of Trump. They've come out and campaigned for Trump. Trump has many spiritual advisors that are pastors that have been well known for decades, although some of them have gotten in trouble, but we're not going to talk about that here. So you got many people that have basically put themselves out there for Trump, right? Many of them. The government is going to put these people, again, Christian leaders, Christian leadership that have supported Trump vocally, publicly, campaigned for Trump, and just Christians in general and Christian supporters of Trump. The government is going to put them in a very precarious situation, but it's going to do it. It's going to turn the knob slowly on how far can they go to offend the principles that these Christian folks should be standing on. How far can they go to offend and undermine those principles whilst still having their support? Like, that's sort of the balance. So, and the reason why they're doing this is because Trump, again, is the agent of chaos. Again, the context is Trump is the agent of chaos. Trump, in some ways, has to be decoupled from the Republican Party. The Republican Party must always, at least for the foreseeable future, must always be the party of the Christian right. But Trump, they needed that party to facilitate the belief that Trump is going to be the president. Again, notice I didn't say that to facilitate him actually being the winner of the election as defined by people actually having the ability to actually vote for the person that's going to become president. I'm saying, like, no, they facilitate the belief that he indeed can be the president and should be the president. So They needed that group, that cohort, again, the Republicans, the conservatives, to do that. They've done that. Trump is now president again for the second time. Now that Trump is president in the second term, Trump, again, as the agent of chaos here, has to really ramp up the chaos machine. But in some ways, he has to be decoupled from the Republican Party to kind of save the Republican Party from himself. So in other words, he can then slowly but surely become incredibly radical, run afoul to any kind of Christian belief or principles as he gets more and more chaotic. But in doing so, you're going to have a lot of Christian right, conservatives, even conservative leaders, Republicans. They will start to come out against Trump. You've already seen this. You've seen this with Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens. You're seeing this with, many people that have started to turn away from Trump. They tried to well, maybe Trump just has bad advisors and that's why he's making bad decisions. And okay, well, I can't co-sign what Trump said, or I wouldn't say that that's the right thing for Trump to do. And then now there's well, Trump is just bad, right? So they, many of them kind of have to go through that evolution, and they have gone through that in the case of Tucker Carlson and others. But there are many others that will soon join Tucker Carlson. But again, Trump has to become chaotic. And then when he becomes more and more chaotic, again, decoupling himself from the Republican Party and the Christian right, in a sense, the Republican Party can then be saved. Because when elections come around, you'll have a large cohort of Republican leadership that would have been against Trump, that have been talking about Trump negatively, that they don't agree with Trump and his policies and the things he's doing, in particular with war and maybe even economic policies. Like, they will start to come out in great force. Why? Because in 4 years or 3.5 years from now, when they do elections, you will have to have another Republican candidate that can actually win, or a Republican candidate that will be believable enough to win, if that makes sense. So in order to have that, you have to have a Republican base or core base of Republicans that are in a sense decoupled from Trump. But Trump, again, has to become decoupled by becoming more chaotic, starting to undermine the very principles and things that Christians stand for. And then you'll start to have more of these Christian leaders and Republicans and conservatives start to make an about face from Trump. Slowly but surely, you're going to see that. See, many, I've seen a few, and I won't call their names out here. And I've seen a few like so-called Christian leaders, still basically stumping for Trump a little bit. Like, they might not be like, that post that he made of himself as Jesus, it's offensive. It's offensive. It is. But maybe, look, Trump didn't make the image, so somebody else made it. He said that he thought that the guy was a healer. He thought the guy was a doctor, and Trump sees himself as a doctor, and that's all it is. Like, that's okay. All right. So these guys are trying their hardest to not throw Trump under the bus, but Trump is going to push them to throw him under the bus. That's the key. But it has to be slow. He can't be extreme with it. You got to, throw out a few tweets here and there, say a few things here and there that basically kind of undermine the principles of Christians, even biblical principles. It has to undermine that in a sense, but he has to slowly chip away at that, and then forcing those same Christian leaders to make an about face from him and start to look inward as Republicans. And hey, Trump is not one of us anymore. And then come election time, they will emerge with their own leader or a new candidate that can, be, the replacement for Trump, someone that's, more in alignment with what they believe to be Christian values and things like that. So that's basic, but all of this is done so that Trump can become more chaotic whilst not completely burning up what's left of the Republican Party, right? Because you still have to have a two-party system, and the government knows this very well. You need at least a two-party system, really just a two-party system. You can't really even have or entertain more than two legitimate parties. You need a two-party system to create the sort of ecosystem or the market for political engagement. So that's basically why they have to still preserve the Republican Party. So again, you do this so you can also then allow Trump to become more chaotic. So that's what this is. Don't get caught up in this idea that Trump somehow is just a loose cannon. Like he's a loose cannon and he just can't hold himself. And no. Trump is not. He's not as loose of a cannon as you think he is. He's not. He's not. So don't buy into that. Again, all of this really inevitably leads to more political engagement because, again, when Trump can slowly but surely become decoupled from the Christian right, from the Republican base, you can still maintain that two-party system, which will foster and instill more political engagement, which, again, allows civilians, to participate in other ways in society. That's why that's still important. But you also have to allow Trump to be very chaotic. And that's also important as a part of this overarching strategy that the U.S. government has at play. So anyways, give me your thoughts on that. I know it's very hard to like kind of, think this way in real time when you start to see crazy tweets and things happening and Trump is dropping F-bombs and saying all kind of vulgar things. And you're like, man, this guy's crazy. But again, remember, it's not Trump. It's the U.S. government.
I'm still learning.